Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/EntitledPeople, where Karens trespass wherever the heck they want, and neighbors park on other people's driveways because, hey, if it makes their lives easier, why not? Guys, the stories today are pretty outrageous as always, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the tales. And remember to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. This happened on Halloween and the day following. So my neighbor is a 38-year-old female, and she has 2 kids. I am a 26-year-old female, and I also have 2 kids. My apartment complex didn't do the traditional trick-or-treating this past Halloween. Residents were advised to set out prepackaged individual candy bags on their patios and front door areas if they wanted to participate. The traditional knock-on-door, physically hand strangers candy was not permitted. So Halloween comes and the kids are all dressed up, and each building has a scheduled time where kids go door to door. I ended up having to work late, so my neighbor offered to walk my kids around with hers at our building's scheduled time. About 45 minutes later, my kids came home with a small bucket of candy, 6 little goodie bags each, from individual apartments that participated. Everything was fine, and my kids didn't say anything weird happened. They were just excited to eat candy once they got home. So the next day, I take my kids to the park directly across from the apartment complex. My neighbor was there with her kids as well. The kids were playing, and she takes out one of those individual goodie bags with candy in it from her purse, and she starts to loudly rummage in it. She ate several pieces of candy, and my daughter eventually noticed, so she ran up and asked if she could have a piece, and my neighbor responded, "Nope. This is my tax candy, remember? This is my reward for taking you trick-or-treating last night." I was a little weirded out by that statement, and I asked what she meant. She said that since she's the one who had to take the kids out, she took 5 bags of candy from each of my kids as a tax. Her son then chimes in and says, "But Mom, you only took 2 bags from us." She then responds with, "I'm your mom. I was doing OP a favor, so they get a higher candy tax. That's how it works." Now, I was thinking about how to respond when I noticed that she was holding a Starburst candy, and I decided to just smile and nod and go back to watching my kids. I let her continue to finish off the bag of candy, and then I said to her, "Hey, aren't you vegan? You know a lot of those candies are made with animal products, right?" I then explained what gelatin was and how a lot of these candies are made with it. And she was horrified. She then Googles it and tells her kids that they're leaving. She then said something about how she's gonna be sick and she stormed off. Now she's giving me dirty looks every time we see her, and she won't let her kids play with mine. My husband thinks that I'm 100% an a-hole because I should have either A, not said anything about the gelatin, or B, said something right away when I noticed. And I disagree. I don't think it's my job to tell her what is and what isn't vegan though. And she deserved it for feeling entitled enough to steal candy from little kids. Okay, first of all, what the heck is a candy tax? If you're 38 years old, you can buy your own candy. There's no need to take it from your kids, and especially not others' kids when you volunteered to take them trick-or-treating. Second of all, I'm not vegan myself, but even I know that gelatin is made of animal products. So I'm just gonna give that lady the benefit of the doubt by assuming that she may be new to the vegan diet, and she's still trying to figure out the ropes. Either way, OP is not the a-hole in this situation. I bought a house a few months ago, and I moved in last month. The previous owner was a friendly old man that could no longer live alone, so he decided to sell and move in with his daughter. Now, apparently he'd been allowing use of his driveway to his neighbor lady, largely because the street parking is extremely limited, and what little street parking there is pretty much instantly occupied. Just to be clear, the lady in question is really overweight. Since the street parking is usually full, unless you have a driveway, you end up having to park a good 5-minute walk away. And that's the best case scenario. Obviously, I was unaware of this, so I was surprised to see a large SUV parked in my driveway when I moved in. I ended up having to knock on several doors asking whose car it was because the movers couldn't stand still on a busy street for so long. I figured out it was the neighbor's car, so after a good 10 minutes of knocking, an extremely angry lady opens the door. I told her to move the car, and she immediately starts arguing that the neighbor said it was fine. I told her he moved out, and I'm moving in, so no, it's not fine, and she has to move it because the movers need to unload my stuff. She begrudgingly did, and I ended up seeing her walk back half an hour later, completely wet with sweat. Now, a few days later, I went to work and I came home, and lo and behold, the SUV's parked in my driveway again. So I go over there again, spend 20 minutes knocking on the door before the lady opens the door, and again, she's visibly angry at me. I tell her to please move her car, as my driveway is not public parking. She then protests, saying that her ankles can't take the walking distance, and she says that since I can easily walk, that I should be the one using street parking, and letting her park on my driveway. I tell her that while this may be true, it's my driveway, and I just want to park there myself. Again, she moves her car, and again, I spot her half an hour later drenched in sweat making her way home. Well, it happened again a week ago, and this time when I knocked, she would not open her door. I knew she was home since her SUV was on my driveway, and I knew she was just ignoring me. I got tired of this, and I had her SUV towed. She of course came by to my house to scream at me, and I told her to get the heck off my property. A few days later, I had a small fence installed with a lock on it to make sure it couldn't happen again. I've since been getting dirty looks from her and this other neighbor, and when I told my mom, she told me I should be nicer to people. I do feel sort of bad too, as she clearly struggles with a walk after all. Now guys, I do feel bad for OP's neighbor for having to walk all that distance because it's hard for her. But OP's right, it is his driveway and she shouldn't be parking on it and being so entitled about it. Especially telling OP that since he's capable of walking, that he should street park and let her have the driveway. In this situation, I don't think there's going to be a solution that they can both work out. I think OP's just going to have to live knowing that she probably hates his guts forever. This story occurred summer of 2018. My mom and I were home alone because the rest of the family was either working or at school. We're sitting in the kitchen and chatting a bit while my cute dog's outside in the garden napping under some trees. We can watch her through the kitchen window that offers a perfect view into the garden. The said garden is quite big. We have a miniature greenhouse, a lot of plants and flowers, fruit trees, etc. In the far back is a big trampoline, a sandbox, and 2 swings. Now we live at the main street of our suburb, so a lot of people pass by over the day. You can barely see the garden outside the property, and you're only able to see one of the swings at a specific angle. The gate was closed when the story happened. So my mom and I are just talking when suddenly my dog appears next to me, very much frightened. I was trying to calm her down, so I sit on the floor and cuddle her, wondering what scared her so much that she fled the garden. Now, you guys have to know that she's very easily scared. She never barks and she doesn't attack in situations of danger, she runs. So obviously something must have happened, and it wasn't the neighbor's cat for sure. I'm on the floor level, and my mom has the perfect view into the garden, and suddenly she says, "What the heck?" I stand up and look outside as well, only to see a woman and her daughter that I've never seen before in my life standing in the middle of our garden. My mom and I decide to confront her, obviously, and go outside. My sweet pup follows us. My mom says, "Excuse me, what are you doing here?" The woman says, "My daughter just wants to play, and I need to relax for a bit. This playground is just perfect for her." She then sits down on one of our outside stools. My mom says, "I'm sorry, what? This is private property. My family lives here, and this is the private garden. You can't be here." At this, the woman says, "Just let us be here. It's so nice, it might as well be a public space." She literally closed her eyes and faced the sun after that. My mom then tells her, "You're literally trespassing. I want you and your daughter to leave right now." At this, I chime in and say, "Okay, miss, we're gonna give you a minute to collect your kid and leave the garden, or we're gonna call the cops as you're committing a crime. Please get your daughter and leave." The woman then says, "My daughter just wants to play. She's not breaking anything." Now at this, she had the audacity to roll her eyes at us. My mom and I just look at each other and she takes out her phone to call the police. The Karen sees this and suddenly she gets up fast, saying, Okay, we're leaving. You both are stuck-up bitches." She then calls her daughter. We decide to ignore the swearing and I just watch her kid walking over to her with a shovel in her hand. My mom still has the phone in hand, ready to call. Her daughter's of course visibly upset, telling the mom that she just wants to stay and play. At this, the mom says to her, I know, honey, but those bad people don't want us here. They're really mean to us, so we have to leave." Now, I can tell that she has the fakest voice ever on. You can see the daughter just melting at this point, and she just cries out "mommy" for a solid minute, while the woman's taking her time to get ready to leave the garden. Now remember that my sweet angel dog was sitting next to me. Suddenly, that entitled brat stops crying, she looks at my dog and throws the shovel at my dog, and it actually hits her pretty hard. The thing was made out of metal, so it must have hurt my dog a lot, and my dog cries out in pain. I then pick her up as fast as I can, basically screaming at the kid, while my mom doesn't wait for a second and calls police. Karen's yelling at us that she and her brat didn't do anything wrong, and that it's our own fault, that she's ready to leave, etc., when my mom blocks the exit. I'm calling my brother at the same time to come home as soon as possible. He comes home and takes our dog to the vets, and the police arrive. The mom is still yelling, and her daughter's crying again. And the mom, being a true Karen, tries to blame us, but since she's obviously not where she's supposed to be and fighting back, the officers then tell her to leave, and she hits one of the cops in the face, and she finds herself in handcuffs pretty quick. In the end, the mom got charges for trespassing and assault of an officer, but because her little brat attacked my dog, they got away with that. I don't know what the medical term is, but my dog's neck was hurt and she was on medication for some time. But the worst thing is that now she's scared of little brunette girls because the brat looked like that. And she avoids the garden if someone's playing with shovels. To this day, I still ask myself how the heck a person can even think that our garden is a public playground. You can barely see it from outside the property. Now guys, I want to say that OP should just put up signs on fences that say private property and no trespassing, but I've read way too many stories where entitled idiots just ignore these signs and go wherever they want anyways. I'm glad OP's dog was okay and the woman got charged, and hopefully that's the last time she does something stupid like this. So before we begin, you're gonna need a little backstory. I have 2 sisters and a brother. One of my sisters is the most dumpster fire person I've ever met. I'd like to say she wasn't always this way, but now looking back, there's always been a sense of entitlement with her that I could never quite understand. My sister's 3 years older than me. We lost our mom very young and we were raised by my father. Now my sister's not my full sister. We do share the same mom, but not the same dad. However, my father met our mom when she was pregnant with my sister. He adopted her right away, and the real father never wanted a relationship with her, and he signed over parental rights. We didn't find that out until right before my mom died. I guess she didn't want to die without telling her. Anyway, my sister was a runaway. It started pretty young. Anytime she'd get in trouble, she'd run. And it wasn't because my dad was strict, it was quite the opposite. He yelled a lot, but we never got hit. We never even got grounded, really. Overall, he was a decent parent. My sister then started getting interested in boys. Bad boys that were in lockup, that do drugs, normal teenage rebellion. The first time she ran away, she ended up going to her real father's house. My dad tried to hide it, but I could see how hurt he was. She kept trying to run away. She'd come back for a month or 2 and then leave again. Sometimes for a few days, sometimes weeks, sometimes months. Months of not knowing where she was. My dad would follow any lead he had. We'd be out well past dark almost every night trying to find her, and I heard him crying a lot. She then got pregnant at 18, had the baby at 19, and she moved back in. My dad paid for everything until the kid was nearly 3. He then told her that she needed to get a job. Instead, she moved out with this illegal immigrant that paid for everything and took care of her kid. She didn't love him, and she made it obvious. They fought all the time, and then he got her pregnant. They weren't together. The dude only stays for so long before he finds someone who actually does love him and wants to be with him. He buys my sister a trailer and she insists that she'll get a job now. She lives down the street from me, and we offer to drive to her as she doesn't have a license, and offer to watch her kids for free. We also offer to let her come over and use the Wi-Fi. For months, she comes over to use the Wi-Fi, but she doesn't fill out for jobs. She downloads movies instead. I ask her all the time, did you pay the rent this month? Did you feed your cat? And months go by. She then tells me that she's getting evicted in 3 days. Now, she had stopped letting me in her house for about 3 to 4 months, so I come and help her move her stuff out. And I find out why. She hasn't been feeding her cat. He's skin and bones. There was nothing left of this cat. So I take him home and rename him. The vet said another 2 to 3 weeks and he would have starved to death. He put on 14 pounds within a year. He's happy and healthy now. She then tells people that I stole her cat. My sister then meets another guy, and this guy has a rap sheet. He's been to prison for big time, violent crimes, and he's got really racist tattoos. He makes her give her daughter to the illegal immigrant, who's now legal. And the guy still has her. She then stops contacting her daughter. I get worried about her because she starts posting some bizarre things on Facebook and not even answering my calls. Things that are not her. Things that sound like she's being forced to write these humiliating posts about how awful she is. I then ask the police for a welfare check on her. She blocks me and I don't hear anything from her for over a year. Our grandmother then passes away. I try to get her to go see her and she makes up some excuse and doesn't want to talk to any of us until 3 months later when my family held a service. My grandma didn't want a funeral. She wanted a party after people had the chance to grieve properly. She has a kid by this guy now. I get her alone and she says she's happy. I tell her she can leave if she wants to and she doesn't. At least she gets to see her daughter. Now I try to talk to the guy for a little bit and things seem okay. His parents are great. Fantastic, really, considering their son. But they ask my sister and the boyfriend to sign over rights to their new baby to them. In exchange, they'll buy them a house, and they agree. They then get pregnant again to replace that child, and they don't tell me until the day she goes into labor. I'd been talking to her every few weeks at this point, and she never mentioned it. She did mention smoking a lot of weed, eating a lot of edibles, and sometimes doing other drugs. And I'm not one to judge, but if I knew she was pregnant, that would have changed things. I give her $3,000 when they move, to help them get their kids new bedrooms as she's seeing her daughter again, and still have the first kid and now this kid. Neither her nor her boyfriend works. Of course not. 2 months later, she then asked me for $350, but I'm hurting for money and I can't give it to her. I tell her I can in a few weeks when I get a bonus. She then tells me her power shut off and this guy's parents took the kids. I still can't help her. She then tells me to never call her again, that I'm an awful sister and an awful aunt, that I'm pathetic and needy. She hits all the low blows. I just said, okay, let me know if you change your mind, and she blocks me. So she contacts me 2 days later and her story's changed. She needs $125 for a hotel room. I tell her to just stay at the house without power. The kids aren't with her, it's not hot, it's not cold. She then says her house was broken into. Every time I tell her no, there's a new story as to why she needs this money. I send her $40 for food. I then find out through a mutual friend that they're selling their newly acquired home, $18,000 home, for $5,000. They're rehoming their dog for a fee, and I'm blocked from seeing these posts. Comments indicate that she has sold both of them. At this point, I block her because I don't want to confront her because what's the point? She's just gonna lie. I figure she's either trying to get drug money, or her boyfriend, who recently got arrested for attempted robbery, is running from parole, or having to go back to prison. Whatever the real reason is, she's not gonna tell me. At this point, she's not spoken to 90% of the family in months, my grandma's funeral being the only time, and before that was years. She starts messaging all of them for money. She tells them that I'm a liar because I warned them what was going on. She then says she's sleeping under a bridge now, and they refuse to go to a shelter because they'll get split up. My parents offer to take her kids. My parents offer to let her move in, but Jailbird can't come. She chooses the bridge. My parents told me yesterday that they got custody of her first child. I see her second child from the immigrant quite regularly, and he and I have a great relationship, but she hasn't spoken to her daughter since December. I feel guilty for not doing more to help her, but at the same time, I feel I've officially reached my end with her. I think OP finally has to let her entitled sister go. Her whole family does. Clearly she's gone down a really dark path, and all I can say is that I'm glad her kids are safe now. Like, what a wild story. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /entitled people. Guys, if you enjoyed the stories today, do hit that thumbs up. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, an entitled Karen rages at a deaf employee, and she learns a lesson. So check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.